I have been married for a long time. My husband, Ethan, is a reasonable and calm man. I met him when we were still students. From the very beginning of the relationship, there were no scandals and intrigues. I always knew that he is an absolute homebody, and except for me, he does not need anyone else. Our life together was always predictable but stable. Such a partnership may seem boring to some, but I always appreciated it for its constancy and comfort. But my cousin, Abigail, has found herself a rising rock star of local fame, Ryan. Not all cobblers make good shoes, and not all musicians make great music. Ryan and his band didn't write much music, but he was sure irresistible. After all, he was the lead singer. I despised him and couldn't resist snorting every time I told him that the stage wasn't his calling, and he certainly wasn't handsome enough to make girls swoon over him at concerts, at least by any objective standard. Ryan once replied that I was just old. I was 29 at the time, and according to him, I didn't understand anything about men. No matter how much I tried to open Abigail's eyes to the fact that he wasn't worthy of her, she wouldn't listen. It was like she was looking at the world through rose-colored glasses. She marveled at his talent and charm, not wanting to hear any criticism. Meanwhile, I couldn't help but feel sorry for myself, as if my life with Ethan was boring in comparison. Though I never expressed it, there were times when I wondered if I was missing something interesting. The whole situation puzzled me, and I tried to come to terms with my feelings. Eventually, I had almost resigned myself to the idea that I wouldn't be able to prove myself right. Abigail seemed so in love with Ryan that any attempt to criticize him only strengthened her resolve. But then we were all invited to a party at a friend's house. Ethan couldn't make it because of work, but Abigail and Ryan were able to make it. I wondered if I should even go. That night, juggling calls about my cranky son, and feeling the weight of my responsibilities, I decided to go to the party anyway. The party was lively, the kind of party where conversation and laughter permeates every corner of the house. At one point, Ryan spoke to me. His tone was casual, but there was a hint of arrogance in it. I immediately made it clear that I had a husband and wasn't interested. He poured me some wine, and we started chatting. I told him I knew everything about him, to which he nonchalantly replied that was great, and handed me a can of beer. And so it went on, glass after glass. The party atmosphere was getting livelier by the hour. I was dancing, something I hadn't done in years, and watching Ryan almost involuntarily. Time flew by, and it was well past midnight. Ryan and Abigail refused to take a cab, saying it was too far and inconvenient. Meanwhile, I was trying to find a hitchhiker. At some point, the party started to quiet down. People were leaving or retreating to quieter places. Ryan and I found ourselves alone on the attic floor, where the cool air from the balcony filtered in, making the room seem even more private. Ryan offered me a hug, so I wouldn't strain my back from the cold. I didn't say anything, not knowing whether to laugh or scold him. Then I felt him pressed up against me from behind. That's how things escalated between us. He leaned over and whispered in my ear, asking if I was cold. There was a strange warmth in his voice, and I answered no, though my words sounded detached and disconnected from reality. There was tension in the air, an unspoken acknowledgement that we'd crossed a line. That night changed everything. It was like a door opened that I couldn't close, and the realization came that my carefully constructed life wasn't as unshakable as I thought it was. I never spent time with Ryan in the same company again. The memories of that night lingered in my mind as both a burden and a warning. I stopped talking to Abigail altogether, unable to look her in the eye without being reminded of my betrayal, perhaps partly because I resented the version of myself I'd become in her presence.